is going up from the EFL Championship to the Premier League in the 23-24 season. Hello guys, how are we all doing? Welcome back to yet another video. We have now made it to the second international break of the 23-24 season, and as you can see now we're a quarter of the way through the season. Things are starting to take a bit of shape. There's already a massive gap between second place and third place, but only 3 points separating sixth, the final playoff spot, and 15th in the division. Today we're going to dissect it and see who could be going up to the Premier League this season. Before we get into this video today, guys, you know the drill. Do make sure to drop a like on this one. We'll go for 500 likes. Do make sure to hit that thumbs up button, as it is free to do, and do make sure, of course, to comment down below if you support one of these teams, what your gut feeling is, which teams make the top two and which teams you think make the top six, the playoffs. Do make sure, of course, to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to get your EFL Championship fix. And let's go through the teams in this table from the top down to about halfway through the bottom half, because this race is wide open. Let's start with top of the table, Leicester City. Leicester City are breaking records. They have had the best start to an EFL Championship season since its formation in the mid-2000s. They are on an incredible run at the moment with 30 points from 11 games, 10 games won out of 11. That means Leicester City's points per game is 2.73, which would have them land on 125 points if they rode this format throughout the entire season. Now, yes, there are going to be bumps in the road. We all know the Championship is difficult, but Leicester City are making it look a breeze. In fairness, a lot of us did have high expectations for Leicester City this coming season. The business that they made, some of the players they hung on to from the Premier League, they were a very strong outfit coming into it, but even then, they have defied some expectations with this incredible start. Winning 10 out of 11 is insane. It is interesting looking at their next 6 fixtures, though, after this international break. Leicester City's next 6 games include Swansea City, who are in good form, Sunderland, who are also in the playoff picture, QPR down near the bottom end, but then Leeds United, Middlesbrough and Watford. Some big games coming in there for Leicester City. If they were to win, I don't know, even 4 out of those 6, they would continue to be in a healthy position. There is one team close on their tail, Ipswich Town, but they have now got a 10-point gap over third place Preston, only a quarter of the way into the season. It's an incredible start from Leicester City. Can anyone see them faltering? I can't. I think top 2 at a minimum, and I'll be honest, I do fancy them to win the league. Not far behind them are Ipswich Town. Now, this is really interesting because Leicester City came from the other direction coming into this season. Ipswich Town have come up from League One, and they're only 2 points behind Leicester City, who we say are breaking records. So a monumentally massive well done to Ipswich Town to be second with 28 points from 11 games. They are currently the Championship top scorers in the division and have a points per game of 2.54, which, if they rode that out through the entire season, would land them on 117 points. Speaking for myself and quite a few others, I did have quite high expectations for Ipswich Town coming into this season. Kieran McKenna's done a fantastic job building up that team, and the form towards the end of that League One season was insane. To finish second with 96 points is incredible, and they've carried that on into the Championship. They've made the step up look so easy, and they are currently 8 points clear of third place. There'd have to be a big slip up here from Ipswich to not be in that top 2 when we get to Christmas time. Their fixtures do look alright until Christmas. They've got some big games against other big sides in that top 10 conversation when we get to December, but right now I really don't see where Ipswich Town are going to drop many points anytime soon. What is interesting is if Ipswich were to perform like a 6th place team that picks up about 74 points through the season, giving them a 1.6 points per game from now on until the end of the season, they'd still land on a staggering 84 points. It just goes to show that points are just as important in the first half of the season as they are in the second half in that homeward stretch. There certainly are plenty of threats to Ipswich Town in that second place position, with the likes of Leeds United and Southampton in that chasing pack, their year 1 parachute teams, and with the likes of Sunderland and Norwich City, who are also a year 2 parachute team. They'll be wanting to keep the pace with Ipswich Town, but the gap they have built up at the moment looks so insurmountable. Ipswich are flying. If you're an Ipswich Town fan, certainly do share your thoughts down below. I have been absolutely blown away by your incredible start. I did predict you to get top half, but this is beyond my expectations to be second and so far clear of third place already. In football, we do see sometimes that a team can have a rapid climb and it is followed by a rapid fall, but at this moment in time, I really can't see that for Ipswich. In third place, we find Preston North End, who seem to be in their own little bubble at the moment, sitting in third place for the last few games, but they've only picked up 1 point in their last 4, and that's seen them fall away from that top 3 conversation and now to being at the top end of the chasing pack. And you do worry, if Preston don't pick up their form after this international break, that there's teams that will strike them down within a game or two. Let's not take take away from that brilliant start to the season from Preston North End though. No one, including myself, expected Preston to be top of the table or in that top 2 after 8-9 games. They have certainly fallen off a little bit. I didn't think they'd regress this much, although I did think there could be a little bit of a regression. Maybe this international break has come at a decent time for Preston North End. They can rest, they can recuperate, and they have had a really difficult run of games playing Leicester and Ipswich away. I know we've seen a bit of a regression here from Preston, and a lot of people might think that'll continue, but I can see there being a little upturn in results soon as well, if they have got nicer fixtures coming up, which I know they do. And looking at this, if they were to perform like a 9th place team, who on average gets about 68 points in a championship season and pick up 1.47 points per game, that'd still get them to 71 points. So they only have to perform like a playoff chaser from now on in to just sneak into the playoffs, because 71 points last season would have got you 5th place. So although Preston's form's dipping, they're still in a strong position due to that fantastic start. Next up, we're going to move on to 3 clubs together that are spread out a little bit amongst the table, but they are the playoff losers from last season: Sunderland, Coventry and Middlesbrough. Now there might be 12 places between these 3 teams, but there's only 5 points between the top team Sunderland and the lower team Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough did just win 4-0 at Sunderland, and they are in some fantastic form. The reason I've highlighted these 3 teams together, Sunderland, Coventry, my side, and Middlesbrough, is over the last 5 seasons in the Championship, 7 playoff losers from the year before have gone up, and at least 1 each season. 2 in some seasons, including last year when Luton Town and Sheffield United got promoted following a playoff defeat the season before. When you look back to where Sunderland, Coventry and Middlesbrough were this time last year after 11 games, Sunderland were the team on the highest points out of the 3 of them, but they're still 3 points better off this time round than they were last time round and sit in a comfortable 4th place with a strong goal difference. Sunderland's next 4 games though are juicy, with Stoke City, Leicester City, Norwich City and informed Swansea City coming up there. Sunderland will be looking to try and win 2 or 3 out of those 4 to keep themselves in that top 6 as we get to the next international break. As for Coventry and Middlesbrough, Coventry are 4 games unbeaten and Middlesbrough 4 wins in a row. Starting with my side, Coventry, out of the 3 teams here, we've actually lost the least amount of games, but we've also won the least amount of games, draws seeming to be our weakness at this moment in time, with 6 draws from 11. That's more than half. Without making too many excuses for my side, Coventry, we have had lots of new players coming in that are starting to gel. Some of them are working, some aren't, and we have been hit with a lot of injuries, especially in the middle of the park, but every team gets injuries and we've got to get on with it. Coventry are still unbeaten at the CBS so far this season, despite 4 of those 6 games being draws. At least we're not losing them, and it keeps the points being churned on. Just got to keep ourselves within touch and distance of that top 6. I do think that Coventry are a team that end the season stronger than they started. It has been a theme with Mark Robins' Coventry teams over most of the last few seasons, and I still have hope that Coventry City can get in there. I do think this is probably one of the most competitive championship seasons we're going to see, with just how many strong teams there are and how tight it is and how many teams are involved. But I do think with Coventry City, if we just keep ourselves within touch and distance, when we get a good run of games going, I think we've got a good chance still. As for streaky Middlesbrough, you just never know. You could almost say that their poor start to this season mirrored their slow start towards the end of last season. Middlesbrough did also start last season quite slow as well, but it was through that middle third of the season that they got a really good run going, and 4 wins in a row. If they can carry that on after the international break, then there's no doubt about it, Middlesbrough will move into that top half and closer to that top 6. Next up in 5th place are Leeds United. Now Leeds United have recovered after a slow-ish start. They suffered with a few draws, but they've won 3 of their last 4 games coming into this international break. Now with the likes of Perot, Bamford, Ampadu, Somerville and Daniel Farke as the manager, who is a serial winner in the Championship, as we've said before, with Norwich City, Leeds were a team that I tipped to get automatic promotion with Leicester City at the start of the season. Now right now I would be leaning towards Ipswich joining Leicester, but if there is a team that can knock Ipswich or Leicester out of that equation, I do think it will be Leeds United. It is worth pointing out, I'm sure most of you know, that Year 1 parachute teams can dominate the Championship. In the last 3 seasons in the EFL Championship, we've seen 4 Year 1 parachute teams going up, so that's on average 1 or 2 every season, and I do think Leeds United have a strong chance. Leeds United certainly have some juicy fixtures coming up after the international break. It's back-to-back away games at Norwich and Stoke, which Leeds will fancy their chances to get maximum points from. Then it's a home Yorkshire derby against Huddersfield Town before they go away to the King Power at the start of November, taking on Leicester City. That'll be a good test to see if Leeds United are up to the mark to get into that top 2 this season. In 6th place, it's Birmingham City. Now Birmingham City, as we have said before in previous Championship seasons, can have a good start. Can they sustain it? Now Now, at the start of this season, I did tip them to be around mid-table. I thought there would be a slight improvement. There certainly was a lot of optimism for Birmingham City coming into this season. And as I say, after 11 games, they've had a strong start. They're in that top 6, 5 wins, 3 draws, 3 defeats, and still unbeaten at St Andrews. But the big talking point is that managerial change just as we went into the international break. Now, I'll leave it to the Birmingham City fans to share their thoughts on that down below in the comments. I thought John Eustace has done a really decent job with Birmingham City, and he started the season so well. But Eustace and Birmingham City have parted ways, and it does look like Wayne Rooney will be coming in to be the Birmingham City manager. Now, for me, I certainly have sympathy for John Eustace, and I hope he does find a new job soon, because I think he is a good manager. As for Wayne Rooney, I won't really make a sweeping judgment until we've seen results play out. If Birmingham City continue their decent start, or even better, improve and get into the top 5 or top 4, then we could start saying some really positive things about Wayne Rooney. If it goes the other way, if they trend down the table, then it's really not a good look for Birmingham City, is it? When you look at Birmingham City's next 5 games after the international break, it does make you think Wayne Rooney might need to hit the ground running as Birmingham take on Middlesbrough, Hull, Ipswich, Southampton and Sunderland. Birmingham City fans, do feel free to share your thoughts down below. Interesting times. We'll just have to wait and see how the next month or 2 plays out for them. Next up, we'll highlight 4 teams all just outside the playoffs at the moment, all joint on 17 points: Norwich, Hull, Cardiff and Southampton. Now, the interesting thing is all of these teams in 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th have 17 points from 11 games. And if you played that out over 46 games, the points per game from that will get you to 71 points, which was enough to get into the playoffs last season. So there's a good argument that these 4 are all on course to make the playoffs with what they're doing at the moment, despite not being in the playoffs as of right now. The Canaries, Norwich City, are at the top of this little pile-up in 7th place. They've only picked up 1 point from their last 2 games and just 4 points from their last 5 games. Norwich City have also conceded 15 goals in their last 6 games in all competitions, and they are suffering with injuries, especially when it comes to going forwards. Now, things could swing either way for Norwich City after the international break, as their next 3 games are Middlesbrough, Leeds United and Sunderland. 3 absolutely massive games for the Canaries. If they come out of those 3 with 2 wins, then they'll probably be in the top 6. If they don't win any of them, then they could be in the bottom half of the table after those 3 games. Norwich fans, do feel free to share your thoughts down in the comments. I, like the bookies, still fancy you as one of the stronger teams in the division and think top 6 is a real possibility for this Canaries team, but do let me know your thoughts down below. Cardiff City were languishing down near the bottom end of the table a few games ago, but 4 wins in a row has blasted them right up into the playoff picture. They have fallen just outside the playoffs now with just 1 point from their last 2 games, but still got to give them so much credit. I'm not afraid to put my hands up and say I had reservations about Cardiff City coming into this season. A new manager who wasn't experienced in the Championship and a transfer embargo, but the business they did has proved to be fantastic, and their next 4 games are all against teams below them in the table, so there's a real possibility Cardiff might get back into that top 6 in their next couple of games. Next up, in 9th place, Hull City have certainly made some improvements on where they were last season. They just don't tend to lose many under Rosignol. They do suffer with draws though, and have drawn the most out of any team in the top half in the Championship with 5 draws from 11. I've got to be honest, Hull City are striking me as a team that I do think can stand up to a playoff chase throughout the whole season. I don't think this is just going to be a good start for Hull City. I think they will get a top half finish based on what they're doing at the moment, and potentially be fighting for those playoff places right at the end of the season. The interesting thing is though, their next 4 games are all against playoff chasing teams. The Tigers' next 4 games are Southampton, Birmingham, Preston North End and West Brom. It's a big month coming for Hull City. Despite being down in 10th place, I still consider Southampton as a very strong threat in this conversation as well, mainly because they are a year 1 parachute team and the quality that they've got, but they are suffering with inconsistent form at the moment and have the worst goal difference in the top half. Southampton, just like Hull, have some massive games coming up, with their next 3 also being playoff chasers: Hull City, Preston North End and Birmingham City. If Southampton win 2 or 3 out of those 3, then they'll be right back in the playoff picture. Next up, you've got West Bromwich Albion, who seem to be in their own little bubble here, the only team after 11 games that are on 16 points. Despite some absolutely fantastic performances from West Brom, including that 4-0 demolition job at Deepdale against Preston, I do still think they look a bit better at home. That is where they picked up the bulk of their points, and they are 6 points better off than where they were this time last year. They've got an absolute gem in John Swift, who I think is one of the best Championship players. They've also got Thomas Asante, who can chip in with goals. And when you look at the Baggies' next 3 fixtures, they've got got Plymouth Argyle, Queen's Park Rangers and Coventry City. All three of those sides are below them in the Championship table. So there's a very real chance West Bromwich Albion can trend up the table again despite a really disappointing defeat to Birmingham City just before that international break. West Brom fans, do feel free to share your thoughts down below whether you think you have a decent chance of making the top 6 this season. You just fell short on the final day last year. Could you do one better this year and just sneak in there? Let me know down below. We'll finish off with the teams on 15 points. We've already highlighted Coventry, so let's have a look at Swansea City, Bristol City and Millwall, who are all just 3 points outside of the top 6. Just goes to show how wide open this playoff race could be this season. I know it's early, but it is still very close. Swansea City certainly did have a stuttering start, and maybe it was to be expected with such big changes like the manager changing and their top goal scorer in Joel Perreault going out the door, but they have found their feet. Did feel like the pressure was on Michael Duff after the Cardiff City defeat and no wins in the first 7 or 8, but they have won 4 games in a row now and have blasted themselves into that top half. The question is, can Swansea City maintain this? They're certainly heading in the right direction, but they've got tough fixtures ahead, including their next game against Leicester City, which I think is a good test for both teams. In 14th place you find Bristol City, who've only picked up 5 points at home this season, but double that, 10 points on the road. I certainly feel like I've noticed a difference with Bristol City this season. They do look a bit better than last year, which could be enough to get them into that top 10 and maybe sniffing around the playoffs this year. As I say, they're only 3 points outside of that top 6, but they do want to get more points at home, and their next 2 games after the international break are both at Ashton Gate. Coventry City, who are level on points with them, and then it's Ipswich Town, who are in 2nd place. Bristol City are 1 point better off than where they were this time last year after 11 games. They've got Sam Bell, who scored 4 goals, Naki Wells as well, who's got 3 goals. Nigel Pearson's been there a couple of years, which gives them, I suppose, a bit of continuity. Bristol City fans, do you think you're going to be involved in the conversation this year? Would make a nice change to see Bristol City sniffing around the playoffs again after a couple of years of just kind of floating around in no man's land. And finally, we'll touch on Millwall. It doesn't feel like it's been a great start from Millwall, especially at the Den, where I do tend to think they're strongest. They've lost 3 out of their 6 home games there in the league. They've also lost a cup game there as well. But you still have a feeling that Millwall, whether they make it or not, will be close. They have finished 8th in quite a few of the recent seasons. And Millwall's next 3 games are against Preston, Watford and Blackburn. All 3 of those sides are not in great form at the moment, so maybe there is an opportunity for Millwall to pick up some points. It is worth pointing out, despite being in 15th, they're only 3 points off the playoffs and have the joint best defence in terms of goals conceded outside of the top 6. So like I say, despite some bad results and a bit of negativity and a few people saying Gary Rowett out, which I'm not here to support him or go against him, I do think Millwall will somehow still be involved in this conversation one way or another. I think they're going to run it close. I do think it'll probably be another top 10 finish despite being 15th at the moment. So that's where we're going to leave it for today then, guys. I know we've got the likes of Blackburn Rovers and Watford a bit further down the table, and they were in the playoff discussion last season, and I'm not ruling them out of it totally, but those sides, Blackburn, Watford and even newly promoted Plymouth, right now are in that bottom 7 or 8 and just need to work on getting away from the bottom 3 before they can really start looking up the table. Do feel free to share your thoughts down below in the comments, guys. Which 3 teams do you feel like will get promoted, or even which 6 teams do you think make the top 6? And feel brave and predict them in the 1 to 6 order down below. It's been great fun dissecting it, and I can't wait for the international break to end so we can see what the next twists and turns are in the Championship promotion race. If you've enjoyed this video, do make sure, of course, to drop a like. Do make sure, of course, to subscribe if you haven't already. And as I say, share your opinions down in the comments. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.